up, guys? All right, if you're in the back behind the camera, you need to slide up. Slide up. Come on, Sean, let's go. Thank you, sir. I'm going to take these out of my pocket because they're kind of distracting. How did I put them? I know they are. They're little baby pockets. That's crazy. All right, how's everyone doing tonight? We got some people. All right. How many of you guys are tired and ready for bed? Me too. That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. All right. So in your guys' life groups, you guys talked about some things maybe that you're passionate about, that you really like, and I want to hear. Now again, we could go on. We could spend our whole time here, but I want to hear just a few things. What are some things that you're passionate about? Okay. Contortion and animals, like separately, right? Contortion is one thing, animals. Okay, just checking and making sure. Yeah. Music. Animals, what else? Sports. Sports and music. Family and sports.
Farming, soccer, and books.
Yes. Say it, you gotta say it, yeah. Did you have your hand up? No? All right. Hockey? Amazing? The environment? Not math. Okay, all right. On that note, there are all things that we are passionate about, right? We could, again, spend a lot of time. And it's really cool. Don't pound the stage. That's going to drive me crazy. Oof. Yep, nope. So it's great that we have all these passions, and they're actually, a lot of them turn into passions and gifts that God has equipped us with, that we can do some really cool things with. But it's also really easy for these passions that we have to turn into objects of our worship. And so that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. We've been in this series talking about different habits, and we spend time, sometimes we have habits that just like are naturally there, like breathing, right? We don't think about them. We have habits that are really good for us, habits that are maybe not so good for us, and some that land somewhere in the middle. So during this series, we've talked about habits that we can add to our lives to help us further our relationship with God. Things like spending time with God and investing in relationships and sharing our faith stories. So today we're going to be wrapping up this series, and we're going to be talking about the importance of worship and making it a habit in our life to live a life of worship. So again, it's cool to be passionate about different things, but I want you guys to think about, based on your habits or based on the things you do regularly, what might people think are the things that you worship? Okay, so think about that. So now I want you to think about, how do you know if you worship something, okay? Whether it's God or Taylor Swift or sports or your girlfriend or whatever that is, what might be some things that would show that, oh, maybe I'm worshiping this thing? What are some things? Anybody? Yeah.
It's always on your mind.
It's always on your mind, so it consumes your thoughts. That's a great one.
You always talk about it.
You always talk about it. That's a great one too. Is that what you were going to say? That's okay. Share it. Sugar? Okay, so what would show that you are obsessed with sugar?
If you would like
Yes, you're always eating it, right? It consumes your thoughts and your words and your actions. Yeah.
What your habits are?
Yeah, what your habits are, if you're constantly, playing sports or doing music or whatever. Yes, last one. Maybe you give it glory. Yes, that is great. Some of the other things that I think about is maybe you guys don't do this anymore, but like I remember when I was in middle school or high school, sometimes we'd like hang pictures in our lockers of things that we really like. You guys mentioned you talk about it a lot. You give it a lot of your time and energy and attention, and sometimes you'll even make sacrifices for it. Now, I want you guys to understand that it's so great that we have all these things that we're passionate about, that we enjoy doing. And it doesn't mean tonight, again, we're talking about worship. And it's probably not a surprise to you guys that I'm going to tell you that our worship should be for God, right? You're probably not shocked by that news, right? That's what we're going to talk about. Now, it also doesn't mean that if God is the focus of our worship, that we can't enjoy these other things. There's a balance to that. And we can also build our habits and incorporate how we worship God into these things that we are passionate about as well. So how do we develop habits of worshiping God that are built into our lives? Not just on Sundays when we're at church or when we're in youth group or Awana or whatever, but how can we have a habit of worshiping God throughout our life? So there's a passage that I want to read to you guys out of Colossians, and this is one of Paul's letters. So he's writing this letter to a church, and he's telling them about kind of how to live a life for God. So it says this in Colossians 3, starting in verse 12. Therefore, as God's chosen ones, holy and dearly loved, put on compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience, bearing with one another and forgiving one another, if anyone has a grievance against another, just as the Lord has forgiven you, so you are also to forgive. Above all, put on love, which is the perfect bond of unity, and let the peace of Christ, to which you were also called in one body, rule your hearts. And be thankful. Let the word of Christ dwell richly among you in all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another through psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs, singing to God with gratitude in your hearts. And whatever you do in word or in deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. Now we might see some words or things that jump out at us when we think about what worship is, right? Maybe you saw the part that it talks about, spiritual songs or singing to God, right? A lot of times that is what we think about when we think about what worship is. But I want to turn your guys' attention to some of those other things that Paul listed here that can also be worship in our lives. Showing compassion, that's listed there. Being kind, being humble, being gentle, being patient. Forgiving someone who's hurt you. And yes, we want to include songs as well. That can be worship, but all of these things can be worship. Again, how we live our lives, how we walk out our faith in our day-to-day can be an act of worship towards God. So two things that I want to kind of focus on that he talks about in here is love for others and thankfulness to God. So we can worship God by loving others. Again, when we're compassionate and kind and humble and gentle and patient and forgiving towards others, it's actually an act of worship towards God because we're following in the example that he set for us. So this shows us that worship isn't always something that's just private, but it can be how we express our faith outwardly as well. So worship can happen by loving others. It can be a way that we display our worship is how we love others. The other thing is we can worship God by being thankful. Again, singing songs isn't the only way. We can do this through prayer. We can, again, at the end of this passage, it says, "And whatever you do in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him." So everything we say and do, right? To express gratitude in that. And I think right now, this time of year, it's really easy for us to practice gratitude, right? With Thanksgiving coming up, it feels like a time to naturally be thankful. But how do we worship God? Through expressing our thanks, not just during this season, right? If we want it to be a habit, then it's not something that maybe just happens once a year, right? During a specific season. But incorporating it in and expressing what he's done for us through Jesus on a daily basis. And the reason that Paul said to never forget about love is because love is the power and energy that drives our worship, right? If we are in love with God and what he's done, then that is why we're going to worship, not just out of obligation, but because of our true love for him. And so when we live a life of worship and not just partake in worship on Sunday mornings, we pull that thread of God's love through our lives, and it's intertwined in that. Another place in the Bible that is a great place to get kind of a picture of worship is Psalms. And King David wrote a lot of different Psalms, but the one I want to highlight today is when he was in the desert of Judah, and it's a song of worship that expresses his commitment to God and celebrates God's character. So he's describing who God is to him. So Psalm 63, starting at the very beginning, it says, "God, you are my God. I eagerly seek you. I thirst for you. My body faints for you in a land that is dry, desolate, and without water. So I gaze on you in the sanctuary to see your strength and your glory. My lips will glorify you because your faithful love is better than life. So I will bless you as long as I live. At your name I will lift my hands. You satisfy me with rich food. My mouth will praise you with joyful lips. When I think of you as I lie on my bed, I meditate on you during the night watches because you are my helper. I will rejoice in the shadows of your wings. I follow close to you. Your right hand holds on to me." So David describes that God is better than anything else, right? It says his faithful love is better than life itself, right? If this is what he's expressing, like he's given everything to the Lord. And so I want you guys to think about those things that you listed, those passions that you said. Your favorite sport, God is better. Your favorite music, God's love is better. Your favorite whatever it is, his love is better. The Vikings win or lose, God's love is better, right? Right? It's a passion of mine, but I know that God's love is better than even that. No matter what else competes for your love and your attention, God's love is better. Now, you guys mentioned earlier, like, give glory, right? And glory was talked about in here as well. So when we're worshiping somebody, we are giving them glory. It's to think or to talk about how amazing someone or something is, right? If we think God is better than anything, his love is better than anything, do you think he's deserving of us to glorify him? Yeah? I think so. I mean, if his love is better than anything, then absolutely he deserves our time and our attention, the words that we speak, right? So worship is about loving God, loving others, giving him the glory. And when we allow love to be a part of everything that we do, we're worshiping God, right? So as you're out on the soccer field, you can worship God while you're doing that. By how you treat the refs, how you treat your teammates, how you treat the other team. While you're playing music, you can worship God through that, right? All of the things that we are passionate about, if we think about it, they can become acts of worship towards God. And that'll change and transform our lives, but it also has the opportunity to transform others' lives, right? It might open up some conversations of, hey, like, what you did out there on the court, like, that seemed kind of weird how nice you were to the other teammate, or to the other team after they did that to you. Yeah. God calls us to be kind and loving, right? Even to our enemies. You know, it can open up cool conversations. So when we go to God in worship, when we choose for worship to not just be something we do here or in big church or at winter camp, but when we let it invade our lives, it will transform us from the inside out. So again, the tiny habits that we've been talking about in this series can impact our lives far beyond anything that we thought possible. So again, as you head out this week, I want you guys to think about what would happen if you made it a habit to worship God, not just on Sundays, but with your life, okay? So I want you guys to think about this, and I'm actually going to have you turn and chat with somebody next to you. But I want you to get creative and think about how you could make it a habit to worship God. Okay? But I want it to be like things that you would actually do like on a daily or weekly basis. Okay? So things that you could do in like 2 minutes or less. Okay? So turn to somebody and talk about how could you worship God and turn that into a habit in your life.
Josh, I know what you would do.
And remember, our habits are more likely to be successful if they're specific. Okay, so if it's prayer, think about how you're going to do that specifically.
Not yet. I want to be committed every day. Do you?
All right, who's got one? Who's got one that they want to share? Yeah, Bryce. Absolutely. Absolutely. Listening to worship music outside. Awesome. I love that. Yeah, right here. By being kind to who? On a sports team, being kind to the other team. Yes, I love it. Who else? Okay. Absolutely, listening to this Impact Worship Spotify playlist. Maybe it's pray for 2 minutes as soon as your alarm clock goes off. Maybe that's a way that you can start your day with the intention of it being filled with worship. Or maybe sending a text, if you have a phone, to a friend who needs encouragement. Singing your favorite worship song as you get ready to go to bed each day. Ask if there's somewhere you can serve at church. Maybe as you're walking through the hallways at school, you can be praying during your passing times for your school. Okay, so those are all different ways. And again, we've, in this series, been doing this thing called habit stacking, where we take a habit we already have in our lives, and then one we want to establish, and put them together with this formula of after or before I fill in the blank, I will blank. So think about that. For me, a habit that I have is that on the days that I walk to work, which believe it or not, even though it's cold, I still do sometimes, I listen to worship music, right? There's lots of other things I want or could listen to. I'm a big podcast person. It would be a great time to catch up on podcasts, but I always listen to worship music. So that's a habit that as I'm walking, right? As I'm walking to work, I will worship God. So again, we're adding these habits. We're not trying to forget the ones we learned the first week, the second week, the third week, how we're spending time with God, how we're investing in our relationships, and how we're sharing our stories. But we want to add this on the habit that we can do to worship God with our lives. And again, think about the transformation that could happen in your life if you make worship a part of your everyday, okay? If your current habits don't reflect a life of worship to God, it's not too late to start developing those new habits. So whether you're at church or at school or you're walking or you're eating or you're shopping or you're playing football or if you're getting ready for bed or getting ready to go out of your house, whatever that looks like, you always have opportunities to honor and connect with God through your worship. So again, this week, how will you make it a habit to worship with your life? Not just as we walk out of here. So we're going to wrap up in a little bit different way than we usually do. And I'm going to invite the worship team to come back up here. Okay? So these guys were willing to, the high schoolers that were in their life groups were willing to come back and do this. But we're going to worship with another song tonight. And it's one that they already did tonight. Okay? So even if that was the first time you heard it, you'll get to hear it for a second time tonight. Okay? And the song that they're going to play is Graves into Garden. And the line is nothing is better than you. Right? And so I want you guys to really think about it. Really think about that as you're singing that, as you're speaking that. Think about how nothing is better than God. Our greatest passions, the things that get us excited, nothing is better than Him. And so I want you guys to really worship, believing that. If you believe that His love is better than anything, I want you to worship like that. Okay? So if that's standing up, if that's sitting down, if that's kneeling, if that's arms stretched wide, whatever that looks like for you, I want you to give your all in worship right here, right now for the Lord. So let me pray and then we're going to jump into this song. God, thank you so much for your love, God, for your goodness, for your word, for your desire to have a relationship with us. God, all of these things drive us towards worshiping you because you deserve it, God. It's not just something that we come and we do here at Impact or in church, but God, we want worshiping you to be a part of our everyday lives. And so we just ask you to help remind us of that throughout our weeks. God, would you help us to build our habits so that when people see the things we do regularly, they see that it's worshipful of you, Lord. And so we just invite you into this space, into this worship. God, would you receive this offering of worship that we want to give to you tonight, Lord? We just invite you in. Let this be a sweet, sweet sound to your ears, God. We pray this in your name. Amen. to proclaim that with how you walk your life out this week, right? We're going to be disappointed by a lot of other things in life, but the one thing that will never disappoint is God and His love for us. So I hope that you guys have a great week. I love you all.